Friends across Canada and beyond. Welcome everyone to our live discussion today. You all know in this live program, we discuss contemporary socio-political and economical situation of the country that affects Canadian. Today, we will be focusing on Liberal Party's throne speech. We have invited Mr. Jashraj Hallan MP from the official opposition party in the House of Commons, Conservative Party. I would like to welcome Mr. Hallan MP. Thank you so much for joining with us.
Thank you so much for having me this morning.
Thank
Shubhrabat
you.
to everyone that's watching.
Thank you. Justin Trudeau's Liberal government has placed their pandemic response and economic recovery plan before the nation. The throne speech is, in fact, a document of Liberals' promise on what they want to do during the rest of the tenure. But not all political parties, especially the official opposition Conservative, is not happy with their plans. Conservatives have openly declared that they will not support the throne speech. Though NDP, by extending their support to the speech, has helped Liberal to avoid the possible election for now. The throne speech is not something that we can call mutually agreed by all documents. Conservative MP Mr. Jashraj Hallan is here to discuss Conservatives' position on throne speech, to explain why Conservatives are opposing Liberals' recovery plan. So we want to start from this point. Mr. MP, why do your party is opposing this throne speech?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your show. It's an honor to join you and all your viewers. I really appreciate the time you gave us. Um, I'd like to say that it's very disappointing um, that the Prime Minister prorogued our Parliament and shut down all of our committees uh, to say that he was going to put a plan forward in front of Canadians that was going to help Canadians. But in retrospect, and what we actually saw was they prorogued the Parliament and shut down the committees to cover up their own scandals. And what we got from the throne speech was a lot of stuff that we heard 5 years ago and years in the past. Things that they've promised before, things that have not, they're just more broken promises. And it was very unfortunate to see that they left out a lot of Canadians, and especially in my home province of Alberta, we were left out of a lot of supports and a lot of help that we not only deserve, but we need at this time. So it's one of many different reasons why we felt that this is very hard throne speech to, first of all, listen to and then to support on top of that. We feel as the Conservative Party that we need to get this legislation right in order to pass this the piece of legislation in front of us from the throne speech that to support Canadians. And we're willing to, as we just recently said, we're willing to work over this weekend to get this legislation right, because we want to make sure that all Canadians are supported. And again, we're very, very disappointed to see that all we heard from this throne speech was the same old things that we heard in previous years and just more broken promises.
Okay, so as you told that you heard all the old things in the throne speech and all the broken promises, would you please explain, like the specifically the promises that is broken? You think Liberal Party promised before and they did not carry out their promise, and you are considering those promises are as broken promise.
Well, I think there's way too many to name, to be honest with you. We were told we were supposed to get electoral reform, and that was just another broken promise. This government had promised pharmacare for not just the last election, but decades ago, and we still have seen nothing move on it. So there's been many, many broken promises. There are way too many to name. But the fact of the matter is that we had a prorogement of Parliament and shutdown of committees to cover up the scandals. And what we wanted to see was good support for Canadians, and we did not see that in the throne speech. And I'd like to take that a little bit back. When the pandemic first hit, we had already been speaking about there is a pandemic coming and we need to take action on it. And it's unfortunate to see in recent news that the health minister was briefed on this back in December, and they took no action on this whatsoever. And so, what we needed to do was support Canadians and be prepared for it. And then, what we found out after that was not only did they have inaction when they found out about it, they also had millions of PPE destroyed that was not restocked again. We were just not ready for this pandemic, just like this government refuses to support Canadians in the time of need.
Well, but the thing we saw that this during the pandemic, government, all the political parties, and people from every corner of the country, they are united together, and we saw them. People are doing their best. So, how you want to say that the Liberal Party did not do their part properly?
So I can 100% agree with you that Canadians are united. We got together at the time of need, and that's what Canadians are known for. We were very united in that front. What we also saw and what we continue to see is a Liberal government who is bent on not on unity in this country. And the best example is you can see what's happening in Western Canada. There's a feeling of alienation going on, and in the throne speech, we saw nothing for Western Canada. Excuse me. So when we saw this government take over, they wanted to implement, and they did, Bill C-69. This bill was detrimental to our resource sector, mainly oil and gas. And what we saw was that this government refused to budge, and then they introduced a carbon tax. And what that did was create more of a feeling of alienation. And we saw that with recently our Premier Jason Kenney here in Alberta spoke out against how much we feel that there's no unity being created here. They're pitting one region against another, this Liberal government, and one province against another. And they're leaving it to provinces to kind of fight it out. What we want is a more Team Canada approach. And I'll give you another example of what happened. When the pandemic was I guess in full force in March, they introduced the wage subsidy. And what we asked was, let's take a Team Canada approach. This is not partisan. We need to help Canadians. They came out with a 10% wage subsidy. When they came out with the wage subsidy, they wanted to ram through that legislation. In there, they snuck in a piece of legislation where they would have unlimited spending powers until end of next year. This was very wrong. This was a pandemic where we needed to support Canadians, but they were sneakily trying to get unlimited spending powers when our debt is already out of control. So we were very effective in our opposition in stopping that piece of legislation from going through as it was. Now, the 10% we had already said it's not enough to support Canadians. People could not leave their doors open and only have a 10% wage subsidy. It took us that much, I guess, back and forth and fighting for Canadians to get it up to 75%. It goes to show that we are ready to sit at a table, voice our concerns of our constituents, and we should come up with a Team Canada approach for all legislation that we're passing at this time. And this is another thing to say that this Prime Minister shut down our Parliament when Canadians absolutely needed more supports. We could have easily worked together through our committees, through our Parliament, and passed legislation that would help Canadians in the time of need at the time that they needed it, rather than having to call special committees or a special sitting. So we feel that this has definitely not unified this country whatsoever.
When you talk about like the carbon tax, we know like the environment is a big issue. Don't you think that carbon tax is something we need to eliminate or to focus on the environmental issue?
So I would like to first of all acknowledge that we have in Canada the best regulated, the cleanest technology in the world. And what we're seeing today is this Liberal government is actually punishing everyday Canadians. And I hear this whenever I go to the doors is, why am I getting taxed for something that I don't even know about? So that means when it's winter and people are putting up their heat, that they're being punished for that. We should our conservative plan, and here in Alberta we had a very good plan, was to we were gonna put a tax on the people who emit the most, and we need to take a Team Canada approach again, but a world approach. And what we saw was with this carbon tax, and which by the way they're going to put on two more carbon taxes on us in a time of within a pandemic. It goes to show that this government is not really about the environment. It's about taxing Canadians. And when they introduce bills like C-69 and C-48, which are very detrimental, like I said, to our resource sector, especially oil and gas, what they're doing is punishing the same industry that's been helping and supporting Canada for a very, very long time. And it goes to show that not only is that not uniting the country, but it's also punishing the same resource sector that is provided to Canada from day one. What Canadians are asking for is not more taxes, and which has been proven. And if you saw what the report was coming out of BC, that their emissions, even though they have a carbon tax, their emissions didn't go down at all. You cannot tax something that you can't control properly. And what we're doing right now, what this Liberal government is doing, is bringing in foreign oil with no regulations, no standards, high emissions, but they're punishing the resource sector here in Canada that we need to flourish and help support Canadians.
When you talk about unlimited spending capacity of the government, is not it that like when there is pandemic or crisis in the country, when people don't have enough money in their hand, then government need to come forward and they need to keep the economy moving by spending from government's part?
Agreed. When it comes to supporting Canadians, and we feel that we should be supporting Canadians. What we do not support is, if you look at the debt that we were in before the pandemic hit, it was out of control. Our budgeting officer of Canada has also stated that this debt needs to be put under control because it's out of control. It's ballooning. What we need to do is have some restraint. Before this pandemic, this government was sending more money to places like China, that was building a pipeline there with that money, and not here in Canada. They were giving money like $15 million to a company like MasterCard, who has revenues that are in the billions, rather than supporting Canadians. So when it comes to spending, which is completely out of control by the Liberal government, we should be doing that to support Canadians, and not what we've seen in all the 5 years that this government's in power, is that they've been out of control and spending where it doesn't need to be spent.
Another thing, we were talking about healthcare, pharmacare. Uh, what is your point of view about government's declaration on this throne speech on healthcare?
Again, like I said, we've heard the pharmacare word come out of this Liberal government for decades now, and we have not seen a single step forward in that. It's been just another buzzword when it comes to this Liberal government. We absolutely feel that healthcare and the health of Canadians is utmost important. Our leader, who up until last week had tested positive for COVID, stood in line for 6 hours to get tested. This is just unacceptable. This pandemic has been going on for 6 months, and we still can't get this part of it right. That doesn't make any sense to us, and Canadians want to know why. So when it comes to healthcare, we need to support Canadians better, and we need to start with better testing, and we need to focus on the health of Canadians, because once we can help the health of Canadians, we can start fixing this economy that's been hit very hard.
Then what will be the Conservatives' plan for healthcare?
We absolutely always have a better plan. First, we need to look at what all the wasteful spending that we see going on at this time in this pandemic. Canadians need better testing, faster testing. We need to have faster results coming out. We need to have a better outcome of when people go to get tested. And this is what we've been saying to them. And it's been 6 months and they still haven't been able to get it right. For a family to stand 6, 7, 8 hours in line to be tested is completely unacceptable.
Of course, but like when we talk about universal health care for the citizen of the country, for the people of the country, what Conservative wants to do for the betterment of the healthcare system for the Canadian?
What we need to do is support Canadians first and foremost. How we do that is it's all hand in hand. We need to have a better, robust economy. We need to help build up our economy and the health of this country, so that people don't need to rely on these supports. That's what our priority should be as a government. The government should always be there to support Canadians that need it the absolute most. But again, what we're seeing is a lot of mismanagement, a lot of broken promises, or promises that they don't know themselves what the cost is, how they're going to get there. It's easy to say these things, but without a plan, which we don't see them put forward, we don't see that a very, very bright future for Canada to get out of this pandemic safely and on top.
Probably you know that the premiers across the country, they issued a statement and they said the especially they refer to healthcare. What Liberal Party is saying in their throne speech is jurisdictional issues, because what they are saying, healthcare is something that provincial governments concern. Provincial government is doing or taking care of the healthcare, and when federal government through any plan or program or interfere in healthcare, is it really a contradictory thing or conflicting thing? What do you think?
I think that both levels need to work together. There needs to be a willingness from this federal government to provide proper supports. I had mentioned before that we were just not ready for this pandemic. They knew about this from December. We were down on stockpiles of PPE. We were not ready. They didn't shut the borders down on time. Our health critic, the Honorable Michelle Rempel, my colleague, she had said that this even caused lives. That was the seriousness of this. What we needed to do again was take a Team Canada approach, which was not taken by the Liberal government. They did not take this seriously and act on it when they knew about it in December. So when it comes to provincial jurisdictions, we still need to work together to make sure that we're supporting Canadians first. And we did not see that. And up until now, again, like I said, that we're still waiting 6, 7, 8 hours for tests. And that's just unacceptable. It shows that we're still not ready. And if a second wave hits, we will not be ready.
As a Conservative deputy leader in the parliament said that Conservative Party is not supporting throne space. So what will happen if, like we know now, NDP has extended their support to the space, and probably Bloc Québécois and Conservative Party will not support it. So what will be the scenario in the parliament in regards to this throne space?
It's a good question. And look, what we want is for them, like I said in the beginning, was we need to get this legislation right. We need to make sure that this legislation is not just rammed through. We need to make sure that we should have been able to debate this, put it into a committee, and pass it. Like I said, our party was ready this weekend, over even on a Sunday, tomorrow, to sit down and make sure this legislation was right for all Canadians, which it is not. It doesn't. It leaves out a lot of people in its form right now, and we are ready to work to make it work. And it was unfortunate to see the Liberal government rejected our request to sit down over the weekend to make sure that this legislation is done right. We're willing to work together as long as we're supporting Canadians.
So we were there were like people were talking about, especially in the political arena, people were talking about early election. And do you think people of country, Canadian, are ready for an election at this point, especially when pandemic is going on, it is not over, economy is in tremendous pressure, and do you think Conservative Party is ready for election at this point?
I think the Liberal government needs to answer, do they want to take advantage of this pandemic like they've already been showing they've been trying to do? And we saw that with the We scandal that happened. And to say that they would take any opportunity, even during a pandemic, we can't put it by them that they would not be opportunistic. What we need to do right now is support Canadians. It's not a time to call an election. Um, and this is something the Prime Minister needs to answer, and that's something that he needs to put in front of Canadians.
Well, this question is regarding Conservative. When you talk to the immigrants, we have a feelings like that. Immigrants, they don't feel conservative as their friend. It is like that in general. Uh, what do you think? Why Conservative Party is like, why people like that across Canada, or why immigrant people are little bit reluctant to be associated with Conservative Party?
So what I can say is that this is fear mongering that we've heard from the left side of the political spectrum from day one. I myself am an immigrant, and I'm raising my own family here. And like myself, I'm very proud to be a part of a party that supports immigrants and all people with all sorts of backgrounds. And we are one of the most diverse groups of people. I will tell you that in Alberta, we are so proud to have our very first Justice Minister who is a Black Canadian, and not only just a Black Canadian, but we have a Canadian who moved here as an immigrant from Nigeria. And it's the first time ever that we see that happening in Canada. It goes to show how our Conservative Party is a big tent open party. What I would also like to say is that um, the men and women of different diverse backgrounds in the Conservative Party, did not get handpicked or chosen. We fought very, very hard nominations and we earned these spots. And that's something to show for a merit that we earned these positions. And in Alberta, I will give you an example. We had the most diverse set of candidates ever in the history of Alberta when we ran. If you look at our party, our leadership race was proof of how diverse our party is. Leslyn Lewis, who I'm happy to see is running for an MP position, is another great example about what our party is like. And I'm so proud to be a part of this big tent party that's most welcoming to everyone. We need to move away from the fear mongering that we keep hearing, because the fact of the matter is, when it comes to supports for families, supports from charity, the Conservative Party is about less government in people's homes, lives, wallets, and inside their schools and inside their businesses. And that's why I'm so proud to be a party of that, because people are wanting to give, people are wanting to be joined charity work and help give back to the community that's given so much to them. And what we see with this, what I've seen, what I've experienced in the Conservative Party is a willingness to let people flourish and grow. And I'm so proud to be a part of this party.
One question came from our community. The Conservative has a history of squeezing the benefit for average Canadians. What will be your comment on this?
I think it's the actual opposite. We have a great history of supporting many people, and that's through whether it's through benefits. And we are actually a party that supports uh, growing this economy so we all help each other out and that we all flourish. And when we talk about benefits, if you would see what the Liberal government did during this pandemic, they gave they not only did they give a benefit that we had to fight for, but they also punished the person that would work more than earn more than $1,000. And what we were saying was that let people flourish. So when we talk about squeeze, we've really been feeling the squeeze. Our economy was growing at almost 0% before this pandemic, and Canadians felt that squeeze. Our economy needed to grow, and this Liberal government refused to let it.
There is a controversy on Bill 21, that is especially Quebec's issue, uh, that is use of religious symbol. So we read news in the newspaper that your conservatives' new leader is supportive of this thing, and there are concern among the people about this bill. Would you explain conservatives' position and your position on this Bill 21 controversy?
Absolutely. I'd just like to say I was very proud that our leader, the Honorable Aaron O'Toole, said he personally disagrees with this bill. I myself and many of my colleagues, including my honorable colleague from Sherwood Park here in Alberta, Garnet Jenius, we stood up in the House and petitioned against this bill. And at a time we're seeing now that the RCMP has also pulled uh, Muslim and Sikh uh, officers from the front lines because of a excuse of a mask, it shows that systemic racism is real right now. I'm so proud that most of my colleagues that have stood up in the House that have talked about this, that we personally do not agree with this. Of course, we need to let this run its course through the courts. There's a battle going on that we just cannot interfere in. And we're hoping to see a better outcome from this. We need to be able to understand why did this bill pass with such high numbers? That's one thing that we need to look at. And it's our jobs, putting partisan politics aside, to inform and also educate people on if there's a fear of immigrants or a fear of these things. We need to be able to educate people and explain to them what is the reasoning behind these. And again, we will like I personally disagree with the bill.
So, do you think like if conservative is voted to the power, your party will take any steps to get rid of this kind of thing from Quebec or from any other province or from the federal government?
Again, we would have to wait to see what the outcome is first. It is in the legal's hands, and then we would have to sit down and see what the steps are from there. It's a little premature for us to look forward and see what that result is first and know what the next step is. But we're always willing to. I am always willing to as well, and I'm so proud that our party is willing to sit down and see what we can do in the next steps.
And another thing, actually, conservatives here in Ontario did not. Another question uh, from our friends who are watching this program. Conservative here in Ontario did not approve $15 hourly rate from 1st January 2020, which was approved by the Liberal. This one of many examples of squeezing the benefit for poor candidates.
So I can't answer to the provincial party of Ontario, but what I will say is that they were left with a lot of Liberal mismanagement. With overwhelming numbers, the Liberal government of Ontario was kicked out, and we saw that in the last election. And we saw many scandals and unreasonable debt, and we're seeing the same thing on a federal level. We're seeing the exact same things. We're seeing nothing but scandals, and we're seeing ballooning debt. And people and Canadians are feeling that, and they're not happy right now with the way that this government is going. And the what I've seen is that the provincial PC government in Ontario was left with a very bad hand when they took over. And it takes a lot of cleanup when there's that many years of mismanagement. And we're afraid that this is the same thing that's going to happen here on a federal level.
So, where do you think Conservative Party in coming years? Where do you see Conservative Party in coming years?
We see us moving forward and fixing the economy, supporting Canadians like we've always done and we continue to do. We see this party making this country so strong and not seeing investment flee from it like we've seen in the last 5 years and bleed away. We see ourselves continue to support the resource sector in our country that makes this country so great, and work with provinces to make sure that we're helping each and every one of them flourish. That is a part of and parcel of our party.
And we will conclude now. So, what you want to say to Canadians, especially to Bangladeshi people, as this program is for the Bangladeshi people who is living in Canada. So, what message do you want to deliver to them from your party and from yourself?
Well, I want to again take this time to thank you for the time on your show to speak to your viewers. I have very high regards for the Bangladeshi community, especially for all the sacrifices that they had to make in order to even create Bangladesh. And I really, really am honored to be on your show to be able to talk to everyone here. I know how much of strong spirit people of the Bangladeshi community have. I was very also honored about a month back to meet the High Commissioner to Canada from Bangladesh. And what I would like to say is that we need to help each other in this very much time of need. I will put the partisan side aside right now and just want to talk to everyone and say mental health is on a major rise right now. We need to reach out to each other and just pick up the phone and call each other and see how we're doing. If there's someone that needs help, we need to reach out and help them. Sometimes we don't know what kind of situation someone is in until we pick up a phone and call them, especially our seniors. They're going through a lot right now with this pandemic and with the talk of maybe another second wave coming. We really need to be prepared and help each other out. We need to take, like we said, a Team Canada approach, but we need to do that on a major scale. We know Canadians have big hearts. We help support each other. And this is the absolute time where we need to just make sure everyone is okay.
Thank you so much, MP Jashraj Hallan, for joining with me. Friends, we were talking to Mr. Conservative MP, Mr. Jashraj Singh Hallan. We were talking about Liberals' throne speech. And we all know that Conservative Party is opposing this speech and opposing all the plans that Liberal Party has brought in front of us. So we were trying to understand why Conservative Party is opposing these things. Uh, we will be talking on this issue more with other party leaders and with experts from our community as well. Uh, we would like to invite you all for our coming shows, and thank you so much for joining with us in this issue, in this show. And I would like to express my gratitude and thanks to Mr. Jashraj Hallan MP. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the time.